I'm Matt McClure, and this is Currents. Laboring with Dignity. We'll take you to a timely discussion on the theology of work.
Catholic social thought began more than 100 years ago in Rerum Novarum with concern about work.
Plus, finding the common good between employers and employees.
We built the middle class, we're under attack, and if we want to save the middle class, we need to promote unions and get back to where we were years ago.
And it's not all work and no play. We'll take you back to last year's Labor Day parade.
The mere fact that we gather as people from around the globe coming together in the name of the Catholic Church to be present at this parade sets a wonderful example for others.
Well, good evening. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. With the Labor Department releasing their latest jobs numbers today, labor is very much on everyone's mind. An early bellwether report from ADP showed continued signs of improvement in the private sector, with employers adding over 200,000 jobs in March. The news, however, not so optimistic for government workers, with Uncle Sam reducing its workforce. And with ongoing labor disputes in places like Wisconsin and similar protests springing up in other states like Ohio and Indiana, the dignity of workers has also become a critical part of our national conversation when it comes to labor. Just last week, St. John's University's law school sponsored a conference on the theology of work and the dignity of workers. Bishops and legal experts convened to examine the place and the necessity of Catholic thought in our increasingly divided workforce.
Work is so central to our nation, our economy, individual families, and individual dignity. It's a vital part of our mission as a law school, as a university, and as a Catholic university to help bring all those pieces together. Catholic social thought began more than 100 years ago in Rerum Novarum with concern about work and about the role of work in the world and the role of work in the creation of the human person.
Historically, the church and unions have been closely tied together, and as unionization has declined dramatically over the past 30 years. That seems to have faded, but a lot of the bishops have come today to say, no, it hasn't. We're still stand behind unions and stand behind the dignity of workers.
This is a time of a great deal of social and historic ferment, so I think everywhere there's an attempt to undermine the right of workers to organize. That has to be at least countered with indicating to Catholics what clear papal teaching is.
From Leo XIII's Rerum Novarum to Benedict XVI's Caritas in Veritate, there was only one focus, the central image, the human person in all his or her dignity.
Union divides are ultimately along political lines. So given the status of the Wisconsin government and the Ohio government and among others, Indiana and Illinois, it's unsurprising what's going on. However, it's definitely exciting how labor is protesting and giving themselves a voice despite what's going on to ultimately quiet their voice.
When it comes down to specific policy kinds of things, what you face as a pastor is that you've got Catholic people really on quite opposite ends of that in your own diocese and your own parishes.
The social question is how we come to understand the common good. That's the social question. How can we make the world more human? How can we make work more human? When we look at immigration, if we want to see it as a problem, is in the workplace. It's not at the border. The fact of the matter is they're working, contributing to our society, and we've kind of looked the other way because we need their labor and we let them come. Clearly, we've got to look at the value of work as immigrants give work in our society.
The dignity of workers and those who are without documents is clearly a problem. We see that they're at the bottom of the ladder. They certainly have to experience discrimination.
Other countries recognize undocumented workers as some kind of contractual right. In this country, we pretend they don't exist. We kind of turn our blind eye to them. They have no rights here, even though they take up a very large portion of our workforce.
Just take take, for example, a workman's compensation. If someone is injured on the job and they're undocumented, they have a very hard time of collecting anything. So that's the indignity, that's the injustice that we're trying to change. If they are working, if they can work, and if they're contributing, they should have the rights that other workers have.
We're talking about deep abstract issues, theology of work, dignity of workers, but also eminently practical. At the end of the day, these problems are problems that need to be solved by smart people working together. And I think as a Catholic law school, we're well positioned to play an important role in that dialogue.
Well, there is more currents coming up. Just ahead, I'll sit down with Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio and work through Catholic social thought on the dignity of labor. Welcome back. Well, ever since man and woman's disobedience in the Garden of Eden, mankind has had a bit of a love-hate relationship with work. Now, the Bible says that before Adam and Eve were cast out of paradise, God told them that it would be by the sweat of their brow that they would eat bread. And so it was. And now, while individual farming has given way to these large agricultural complexes across the country, and most of us have traded in our chickens for computers, at least metaphorically, people continue to sweat and to put food on the table. So how does an activity that's so closely associated with punishment become so central to our lives and our individual dignity? Well, for that answer, I had to go to an expert, Brooklyn's very own Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio. Bishop, thanks so much for being here.
Good to be here.
Really appreciate it. Of course, this topic is very timely as far as work goes.
That's for sure.
And it's no shortage of talk about it in politics and everywhere else. And I understand, and actually, folks are going to see a little bit later on in the show, you took part in the conference over at St. John's University about this.
2 weeks ago.
What is the Catholic understanding of work, kind of in a nutshell?
Well, work, it really is not a punishment. Work is not a castigation from God, but work is a cooperation with God in creation. Although, again, at the beginning, we see God does tell Adam that by the sweat of his brow he will earn his living and will bring forth from the earth. He also says that we become cooperators with him in the creation of the world. This is certainly our understanding as time has developed. Sure. We can look at, some people would see work as something to get through, to get to leisure. In fact, at the conference last week, one of the presenters said this and was challenged. Said, no, we don't believe that. It's not, work is not just something to get through so you can stop and rest. Yeah. Work is something in itself that is something good because we cooperate with God in the creation of the world and the recreation of the world. So we see it in very positive ways as Catholics, Christians.
It's like, in creation, God worked for 6 days, and then on the seventh day he got through the work and rested. But that's one way to kind of look at it there. So what is the purpose of work? If it's not just to get through to the rest, what is the purpose of work in a person's life? And how do they sort of realize that?
Well, work actually is something that should satisfy man. It is so difficult for people who don't like their job to get up every day and go do something you don't like to do. I mean, that is probably the worst thing that I can imagine. I don't have that problem. I do like what I do as a vocation and as the work is involved. But many people don't. And it's hard to say, how much of the population really don't like their work. And but it is something we should like, and we should try to find the work that does satisfy us, because it is where we spend most of our lives. It's 8 hours a day and probably more in many cases. So we have to enjoy it and put ourselves into it and make it a vocation. This is the way we live our lives. How we will contribute to the world and its recreation.
Sure. And of course, as I alluded to at the beginning of our conversation here, this is of course a topic that a lot of people are talking about across the country. I mean, we've had, of course, in Wisconsin, in Ohio, Indiana, other states, with the kind of these labor disputes going on in the political arena. How does the Catholic Church look at those types of talks as far as the discourse between labor and the employers?
Well, clearly church teaching over the last century or more has taught us that workers have a right to organize. That obviously is limited by the common good. Should public employees be able to strike? Well, that's another question, if there's vital services. Should public employees be able to have a union? Well, I think the church would say yes. But at the same time, where are they? What kind of demands are they making? What work are they performing? What limits for the common good, again, are they looking for? It's a difficult time for the world, and certainly for our own country. Inflation is low, but still people want to have that raise that they had in the past. Maybe they don't need it the way they had in the past. So there's a lot of issues. It's rather complicated. In short, yes, workers have a right to organize. That's clear. At the same time, it's limited by what the common good of the country is and of the people themselves.
Sure. All comes back to the common good.
Yeah, right.
All right. Well, Bishop DiMarzio, thanks so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
Okay.
Well, and stay tuned. There's much more Currents coming up. When we return, can employers and employees find common ground for the common good?
A poignant question might be for us who are speaking about labor negotiations. Does our activity or engagements enhance or threaten our life together as a community?
Welcome back. Well, it is a tug of war that would have perplexed even the wise King Solomon. How do you balance the needs and interests of state governments saddled with mushrooming projections of debt and rising unemployment with the needs and interests of a workforce that wants job security and the leverage to maintain key workers' rights? Well, this age-old tension was just one topic at a conference on the Theology of Work and the Dignity of Workers last week at St. John's University's Law School. Well, with the continuing union protests and rallies in Wisconsin as the backdrop, labor leaders and academics gathered to explore what common ground lies between the employee and the employer so that both can achieve the common good. Last week, St. John's School of Law hosted a conference that examined the theology of work and the dignity of workers. The conference wasted no time digging into the issue with its first panel, a discussion on restoring the common good between employers, employees, and unions. So just how is the common good defined? Well, Father Patrick Flanagan, assistant professor of theology and religious studies at St. John's University, says the church's view is very specific.
The Roman Catholic's vision of the common good as expressed in its organic social tradition is a sum total of conditions that make life together a naturally occurring and desirable reality, and therefore allow individual members of society to fully achieve one's perfection.
At the heart of the issue, the recently passed law in Wisconsin, which would undermine the unions by significantly weakening collective bargaining rights.
If the dignity of work is to be protected, then the basic rights of the workers must be respected.
The controversy started with the Wisconsin budget repair bill proposed by Governor Scott Walker in answer to a $137 million budget shortfall. The bill addressed more than just collective bargaining rights. Pension costs and health care premiums would also take a hit. This move prompted tens of thousands of demonstrators to take to the streets all over the country in protest of the Wisconsin law, including union members, students, and concerned citizens. While acknowledging the issue is complex, Walker insists the goal is balancing the budget and that at the end of the day, the move will be a positive one.
Obviously, there's a lot of hard feelings, a lot of tension there, but I think every day we move forward, and the more we get talking about jobs, the better off we're going to be.
But Bernie Rickey, president of the United Auto Workers Local 600, argues that the governor is misleading people.
It's not about the budget deficit. The unions agreed to do what was necessary to eliminate the budget deficit. They were willing to make those cuts in these economic times. So it really was not about that. It was about collective bargaining rights, about having power, and about destroying unions.
What this governor is trying to do is deny basic rights of workers to have a voice at their job.
Judy Scott, an attorney with the Service Employees International Union, suggests that Governor Walker is staging a political coup.
He rammed the law through in basic violation of the citizens' rights to have an advance notice and the right to debate the bill.
But it's going to affect families too, because they're going to impose cuts and increase in health care premiums on families that are already struggling.
But Jerry Laracuda, president of CSEA Local 830, says that the public outcry that followed was born of the belief that the common good was violated and that further consequences lie ahead.
I think they crossed the line. They hit a nerve. They woke up middle-class America, and I think it's going to reflect in their poll numbers. And I think that in November, we're going to see the result of these anti-labor, anti-middle-class, anti-American moves and tactics by these politicians.
But some people fear the decision in Wisconsin may have lit a fire that will be hard to stamp out.
And it's spreading to all these other Midwest states. It used to be a stronghold of unions, and some of it's worse than what's in Wisconsin. I think there's more danger maybe in Ohio than some of the stuff they're proposing there. In Michigan, they're proposing some things too.
A poignant question might be for us who are speaking about labor negotiations. Does our activity or engagements enhance or threaten our life together as a community?
We built the middle class. We're under attack. And if we want to save the middle class, we need to promote unions and get back to where we were years ago.
And there still may be hope for the unions. On March 18th, a judge issued a stay on the law, preventing it from going into effect for now, after Dane County officials said legislators passed the bill without proper public notice, a violation of the state's open meetings law. Ms. Scott says she's confident the common good will triumph.
We're hopeful that it will be reversed and that justice for all will prevail.
Well, stay tuned. There's much more Currents coming up. Coming up, with all this talk about work, we'll take you back to Labor Day and a celebration of West Indian heritage in Brooklyn.
We marched down the Parkway, evangelizing and spreading the good news of Jesus.
And finally tonight, who says the Diocese of Brooklyn doesn't know how to party? We've spent a good part of this program discussing work, its centrality, its dignity, and its challenges. But as you and I both know, all work and no play would make Jack, or in this case the diocese, a dull boy. Well, we want to take you back now to September, Labor Day in particular. And on that day, for the past 43 years, West Indians and others have flooded Brooklyn's Eastern Parkway for the West Indian Day Parade. In recent years, the Brooklyn Diocese has let its proverbial hair down for a day as well to celebrate all things Caribbean, cultural, and Catholic.
Today is a major day of celebration for the West Indian community in the Diocese of Brooklyn. This Mass today is the beginning of our participation in the West Indian Day Parade. We will march as a group. Last year we had over 3,000 people marching with us. So it's really a statement of the Catholic presence in the West Indian community here in Brooklyn.
The Catholic Church is diverse. It's all over the world, and that's what the Caribbean is made up of, people from all over the world. And that's what we have here today, all through here, people from all over the world. And we're bringing Jesus to the Parkway, blessing the Parkway before, everybody else comes out.
We are local missionaries and messenger of the good news. Amen? And so we need to wake up and rise up to the challenge of today. What you receive, you need to give to other people and make a difference in the world, now and forever. Amen.
We let our presence speak. The mere fact that we gather as people from around the globe coming together in the name of the Catholic Church to be present in this parade sets a wonderful example for others. And the bishop himself leads us in this effort.
Sometimes the parade has kind of a carnival atmosphere, but we're at the beginning, and so we set the tone a little bit differently.
We marched down the Parkway, evangelizing and spreading the good news of Jesus and our faith down on Eastern Parkway. Being out here and our presence out here says we're alive, and yes, you can join us and be part of the Catholic Church.
I've often told my Caribbean friends, as an Irish Catholic, I'm a little jealous because I thought the St. Patrick's Day Parade was the big one. I think the Caribbean Day Parade is now clearly the biggest we have in the country.
Certainly today, immigration is a major policy issue in our country. The West Indians feel it. They have the relatives who would like to come. We've had the earthquake in Haiti, so this is a major policy problem we deal with day in and day out.
And we think it is important for us to gather on a day like today, on Labor Day, to come together as people from around the world that reside in the Diocese of Brooklyn unified and to be able to celebrate together, pray together, represent who we are as Catholics, and be out in the parkway.
Always a colorful celebration and a lot of fun. Well, hope you have a lot of fun over the weekend, and be sure to tune in tomorrow night at 8 o'clock right here on NET as we commemorate the anniversary of Pope John Paul II's death with the movie that best illustrates his time as Pope. It's the acclaimed Carol II, The Pope, the Man. That is tomorrow night at 8 here on NET. Well, that is it for this edition of Currents. Be sure to check us out online at currentsny.net over the weekend. We're also on Facebook and on Twitter if you prefer those routes. If you have a question, maybe a comment or a story idea, send us an email. Our address is dropusaline@currentsny.net. For all of us here at Currents, I'm Matt McClure. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great night and a great weekend.